Hi, my name's Luca and welcome to my Tuscan kitchen table. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a crostata, a typical Italian dessert which, like all Italian food, is very simple but absolutely delicious. So we're going to start off by making una pasta frolla. This is what in English we call short crust or pie crust pastry. So in order to do this, I'm going to start off with 250 grams of plain flour. The flour you use really depends on where you come from. Use whichever pastry flour you use for pastry, so for patisserie. In Italy we have this flour called zero flour, and they use that for all the pasticceria, so that's what I'm using today. Then to that I'm adding 50 grams of sugar, just ordinary granulated sugar, and 5 grams of salt. So I'm going to stir that around a little bit with my hand in order to sort of make it all come together. Okay, don't worry too much about the quantities because they're all down below in the description, and I'll be going through them at the end of the video as well. So next we want 125 grams of butter. I've cut it into small cubes, as you can see, and this is cold butter straight from the fridge. And you put that into the thing. You can make pastry on the board, in fact most people do, but I like to do it in a metal bowl. The reason being is that it all comes together better and you don't lose any of your ingredients, as you'll see when I come to finish it. So what we need to do now is rub the butter into the flour using our fingers like this. Okay. And really squeeze the butter between your hands and really rub it into the flour. We're aiming to try and get a consistency of fine breadcrumbs. It takes a little while. Okay, so as you can see, my flour is now the consistency of breadcrumbs. So what I do next is I make a well in the middle of the pastry, and I'm going to pour some water into that. Here I've got about 120 grams of water. The amount of water you need really depends on where you are. Here I'm halfway up a mountain. I'm about 700 meters of altitude, which is quite high, and it gets quite humid here. So I tend to use less water than I used to when I was living, for example, in Paris. So I pour some of the water in, not all of it. I just take my hand and mix around like this, like a mixer. And actually just mix all the water in with my mixture. And I'm just looking to be able to bring the mixture together into a pastry. So it's beginning to come together now into a ball. You really don't want to work this too much though. The moment it comes together into a ball, you really want to stop. Another reason why I'm using the metal bowl, like I said, is that it's easy to squeeze the pastry along the side of the bowl and bring it together that way. And you don't waste any of your ingredients. It's very important to have the right amount of ingredients, and if you lose them all over the board, or it goes over the floor if you're cooking on a work surface, then you've actually wrecked your pastry, and it's much less likely to work because you've actually changed the consistency, you've changed the proportion of ingredients. Okay, so there is my pasta frolla. And what I now need to do is I need to wrap this in cling film and put it in the fridge for about 1 hour. It needs to chill and to rest. And then you can bring in to roll it out. So while this is going in the fridge, I'm going to have a coffee. So I will see you very, very soon. So my pastry's now been in the fridge for an hour. And what I'm going to do now is roll it out and put it into this tin, which, as you can see, I've already buttered. And I'm going to bake it without the base in the tin. I've actually taken the removable base out. And the reason for this is that the jam, which we're going to put into the crostata later, is quite liquid, And this way, if I don't have the base in the bottom, it helps for the pastry to cook underneath because it's directly on the baking tray, and it avoids having what I think in the UK they tend to call a soggy bottom. So I've got flour here ready to dust my board to stop the pastry sticking. And what I'm going to do is I take the pastry and I'm just going to gently press it with the rolling pin like this, 1, 2, gently squeezing it, and then turn it 90 degrees. And the reason I'm doing this is because this helps to make the pastry an even width when you roll it out. Okay, so I'm now going to gently roll out the pastry, applying an even pressure with my rolling pin, and I want to make it so it's a little bit bigger than the tin. So I roll it, and every now and again you turn the thing through 90 degrees. Again, this helps to keep the pastry the same thickness all the way through. Okay, so perfect, that's now big enough for our tin. So, because there's no bottom in the tin, I'm going to keep it on the baking tray. And what I'm going to do is just gently lift up my pastry, being very careful not to split it, with my rolling pin. Yep, and then just slide the baking tray with the thing underneath, and gently lift my pastry and lay it very gently over the top of the tin. Now I want to make sure that the pastry goes right into the base of the tin, so I'm going to just lift it up and gently with my finger push it down, but also mould it into the side of the tin. And then what I'm going to do is, taking my rolling pin again, I'm just going to roll over the top of the edges of the tin in order to cut the excess pastry off. Don't throw this away because we're going to need it for the next part of the recipe, as I'll explain in a minute. Okay, so as you can see, my tin is now perfectly lined with my pastry. I'm now going to take a fork and just prick the bottom of the pastry case, just gently like this, just so it's got little holes all over. Okay, and now this has to go back in the fridge for another hour. And the reason being is that because the filling is quite liquid, this will help the pastry to start firm up. And again, we'll make sure it's cooked all the way through and we don't get that soggy bottom. So I think it's time for another coffee. So, while my pastry case was in the fridge chilling, I actually rolled out the spare pastry, the stuff I told you not to throw away, and I've been cutting it into strips like this using this ravioli cutter. This is a common implement that they have in Italy for making pasta. So I've just got 2 more to do, and you want to make them really neat. Yep, there's one. And one more. And that's 8. So here's my pastry case, which is now chilled. And what I'm going to do next is to put some jam into it. You can use any flavoured jam you like. I happen to be using cherry here because it's one of my favourites. But what you want to do is to make sure you don't put too thick a layer of jam across the bottom of the crostata. You want it just to be covered. So I'm going to put my jam in now and just smooth it out with the bottom of the spoon. Like I say, I just want a nice thin layer of jam across the bottom of the crostata. So what I'm going to do next is to take the pastry strips that I've cut out and actually lay them across the top of the crostata in like a grid as decoration. So I'll take the first one. And again, you want to do this really very carefully to make sure it's nice and even. Two. And what you want to do is just press down with your finger to take the edge of the pastry off using the edge of the tin. There we go. Perfect. And the next one. And the next one. Next two. Don't worry if it looks like the pastry is very deep and you haven't got much of a layer of jam, because the pastry is actually going to shrink a little bit during the cooking, so it'll actually be better when it's done. Four. When you've done 4 this way, then do 4 the other way to create a lattice. Two. And 2 more to go. One. And 2. Perfect. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go round the edge of the crostata with a fork, just pressing the pastry into the top of the tin. Like this, very gently. This helps to attach the lattice work to the edge of the pastry. You can turn the tin as you do it. You might want to get down at the level of your tin to look at what you're doing. This also makes it look nice and pretty. Okay, and then what I do is just do one more roll over the top with the rolling pin, just to make sure that the bits of pastry at the end of the lattice have come off too. Gives you a nice edge to the whole of the crostata. Okay. So my crostata is now finished and ready to go into the oven. So this goes into the oven at 180 degrees for between 35 to 40 minutes. So again, probably time for another coffee, and I'll see you when it's baked. So after 40 minutes in the oven, it looks like this. Be sure to let the jam cool down completely before you eat it though, otherwise you could burn yourself. So if you enjoyed this recipe and want to see more like it, you know what to do. Click the subscribe button below, and buon appetito!